Chapter 13, Otherworlds Moon, 3. Huh? Who? Sang Jin made a shocked face as he saw the chocolate bar in his hand burn down to nothing, one of the few things he took before coming out. When he quickly checked, the contents of his bag and his pockets were disappearing at a fast pace. Sang Jin urgently looked at Hansu and shouted, "How did this happen?" And then Hansu shrugged his shoulders. "Even if I have psychic powers, how would I know of something like that?" Ah. Sang Jin looked at the emergency food in his hands that had turned into dust and made a resentful face, but then realized something. Is it possible that the other's food also... As Sang Jin quickly looked at the outside of the second floor of the cafe that he used to be at, he heard shouts from all around. "What is this? Which bitch planned this out? God damn it. Some guy took everything that was piled here. It's all gone. I'll kill you." A deserted city at a single glance, a place that seemed very hard to obtain food at. Everyone had obtained food from the store on the second floor, but logically speaking, no one would have thought of going down to the even more dangerous second floor after getting through the first floor, which was filled with green worms. Without Hansu, they would have probably had to starve for another 2 to 3 days. And when the food disappeared in such a situation, the anxiousness of the people had exploded, and even rage. Eh. As Sang Jin groaned at the chaos afar, Hansu smiled bitterly. It's really a god-forsaken world. Not a single moment will be left in peace. Firstly, because of that, all the foods that one had in possession will burn down and disappear, which meant that it was impossible to stock up on foods and then nibble away at it. That's why I told them to not take them all. Tisk. If you leave it in the convenience store, that it does not count as being in one's possession, so it remains. The reason why he had buried it was to share it with the 7 after climbing back up with them. The residents of the otherworld must scavenge food every day. No matter if you search for every food within the corners, no matter if you kill a beast, find a way to get rid of the toxicity, and then eat it. If only it ended there. And soon another change occurred. White light started to come off from people's bodies, as if they were shrouded with moonlight. Huh? Sang Jin panicked as he saw his chance and then looked around. And then he drooled. They could see where every single one of the 100 were. No matter if they were blocked by a wall, the moonlight was showing each other's locations and was sharing them. When he turned around, Mihi and Hansu's body had moonlight coming off of them also. Ah! From the feeling of being naked, Sang Jin and Mihi clenched their teeth. There was no way that their location being exposed would feel good. God damn it, Hansu, who had been looking at the two, stood up. Since the moon has risen, it was time to move. "Where are you going?" As the two asked anxiously, Hansu shrugged his shoulders. "Gotta do work." It was a reward that could only be gained on the first night of the tutorial, and only when you clear the mission while the moon was up. The requirements were rather simple. The problem was that it was on the first night. Most people will figure out their situation after the first night, and then will zealously hunt for food. Beasts will naturally come into their views, and naturally they will get their carcasses to cook them around the second day, but a situation where one cooks the toxic beast within the first day to eat it was rare. The jar that you obtain after all this is rather simple. It hid the food away from the eyesight of the moon, and always kept the food inside fresh. The name was a jar, but it was in the form of a small pouch. And the storage amount is important. The storage amount was 5 times the amount of food you eat within 6 hours. 1 person's worth meant 5 people's worth of space. 10 people's worth of food eaten meant that you could store 50 people's worth of food. The fact that you could store food was very advantageous in this situation where that damnable was up. He had to eat as much as possible. But I should cook things thoroughly. It was rather simple, but to do that, a lot of preparation was needed. Since you need to get rid of the toxins within the carcass. Cooking, huh? It's been a while. Cooking was one of Hansu's hobbies, since it was one of the things that made the tongue happy as well as being one of the small moments of happiness. And it was one of the basics of the basics in order to survive within the abyss, where the moon came up. Bubble Hansu leisurely boiled goblin blood as he was lost in thoughts. The current amount of carcasses in possession are 4 kinds: goblin, green worm, land mermaid, barb snake. And out of the 4, if you cross out the land mermaid that you cannot eat even after you cook it, it leaves him with 3 kinds. And out of those, the green worm's carcass was rather difficult to detoxify with the materials you could obtain. The main ingredients will become goblin and barb snake. In the abyss or the otherworld, if you can cook the beasts well, then their meat becomes amazing. One of the friends told him that, so it's likely that it's true. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Whilst he was boiling the blood to get rid of the toxins within the meat, Hansu pulled out the kitchen knife embedded on the barb snake, sharpened it, and then started to chop the barb snake up. The barb snake has no toxins, so you can even eat it right away by making sashimi. The only problem was that it was hard to catch and that there wasn't much to eat because it was mostly hard muscle. He took a slice, chewed on it, and then made a content smile as he gulped it down. It's rather good. The chewy taste was rather good. The seasoning was a little disappointing, but the texture itself gave satisfaction. Sang Jin looked at Hansu with a priceless expression. Isn't this guy just insane? He was eating the monster meat in such a leisurely way. If somebody saw, they might have mistaken him for eating sashimi by the seaside. But whilst Sang Jin was cursing Hansu off, Mihi had a slightly different thought. Is that something you have to do too? What are you talking about? The one who had answered Mihi's insensitive question was Sang Jin. Mihi replied at that. He could just move away and hunt, but he's doing that instead. Hansu had never done anything unnecessary. Hansu, who had continuously reminded them of hunting, was cooking like that, which meant it was a necessary action. There was only reason why Mihi thought like that. She didn't know what Hansu's psychic powers were exactly. She could guess somewhat. He knew what to do in order to achieve rewards. Hansu looked at that Mihi contently. Good. She was growing up well, but Sang Jin wasn't really happy at Mihi's words. He would probably just eat it by himself this time anyways. At those words, Hansu looked at Sang Jin and then answered. You guessed correctly. Huh? Sang Jin was instead flustered by Hansu's confident words. God damn it! What do we do? Jisun, who was grabbing onto Gang Tae anxiously, yelled at Tae-soon. Shouts were coming from afar. Didn't the ones who went to the store first do some tricks on the food? Let's first catch those guys. Their food might be different. I can see them over there. The reason why they didn't invade was because they both had something to eat, since there was no reason to fight unless they were desperate. But the situation was now much different. If their food disappeared like this every night, and they had to find new food every time, then they had no time to idle around. They could starve to death at a moment's notice. And that problem becomes worse as the size of the group becomes larger. Tae-soon looked at the ones running towards him from afar and clenched his teeth. There was no way to hide either, since that damnable moonlight was showing every living existence below it. And then Tae-soon realized what that moon had wanted from them. It wants us to kill each other since the board was set, huh? They could not face that amount of people. Maybe if their numbers were 8 or 7, but with just 5, they had no way of beating them. The reason why Tae-soon was at ease was because they would have thought that there were 8 of them and wouldn't rush in thoughtlessly. And because they were calm even when it became night like his expectations. But the fact that there were 5 of them would be discovered at this point. Whilst Tae-soon was clenching his teeth, the girl who was standing quietly in the corner, Sunmi, shouted, Instead of staying here, let's go to Hansu. What? Tae-soon momentarily burst into anger and then gazed at Sunmi. Sunmi was slightly scared by that expression, but then shouted, Then what do you want us to do? Are you going to fight them with only 5 of us? Tae-soon clenched his teeth at those words. He only has strong confidence. Sunmi clicked her tongue inwardly but didn't show it. Every person had a limit, and if they went past Tae-soon's limits in a disadvantageous situation like this, then they couldn't expect what would happen. Whatever happened, the strongest of the 5 was Tae-soon. Sunmi organized her thoughts, and then spoke cautiously as if she was soothing Tae-soon down. Instead of this, let's cooperate. We aren't going to Hansu. We're just combining our strength. If we become 8, then they can't look down on us. After we buy time, we can explain that our food has also disappeared. Who? Tae-soon calmed down at Sunmi's words of combining their strength and not going to Hansu for help. Yeah, we aren't going out to find that guy for help. We're just combining our strength. No matter if it was Hansu, it would be hard to handle the enraged mob. He definitely cannot ignore the strength of the 5 of them. Tae-soon, who had organized his thoughts, stood up and spoke. Yeah, we need to help him. Let's go. Retard. He seems to still think that this is a world where his father exists. Sunmi belittled Tae-soon, who was holding up his confidence even in a situation like this, but didn't really add extra comments, since there was no reason to make enemies. Damn. I stayed here only because of the food, but it was a blow. I should have noticed when that bitch Mihi stuck onto him. Sunmi clicked her tongue. She didn't follow that group because she didn't want to be pushed back by Mihi. In this group, without Mihi here, her beauty was at the top, and then she could probably control the 2 men with ease. And there was no problem since she usually acted as the leader of the 3 who were here. But it had led to this situation. I have to grab onto a new opportunity. Sunmi, who looked at Tae-soon, who was wheezing out pitifully, thought of Hansu and ran as she bit her lips. But at that moment, something flew in from behind with a very fast speed. Uwak! Splash. As the mysterious object latched onto his ankles, Tae-soon's ankles were entangled, and he fell just like that. Tae-soon tried to untie the yellow thing that had bound his legs, but that thing on his ankles just got tighter and tighter. Fuck! It's a skill! Tae-soon panicked and shouted while looking at his friends. Hey, carry me and run, please! But Ji-sun, Sunmi, and others who were looking at that Tae-soon hesitated for a moment, but then abandoned him as they ran. Tae-soon roared in rage as he saw his friends act like that. You bitches! Hey now, why is such a young friend like you cursing like that? Tae-soon spun his head as he heard the footsteps and the voice from behind. Dozens of people who had red eyes due to being angry were walking towards him. These people were extremely agitated from the fact that all their food had suddenly disappeared, as well as the danger they felt from their positions being exposed. While Tae-soon felt the chills on his back from the eyes of the gang that could beat him at a moment's notice, the man who had been standing in the very front spoke as he laughed. How is it? It's called Oron's adhesive. While you guys were doing things, we were also working. Since our numbers were high, things like this dropped. But why is there only 5 of you? Where did the other 3 go? He thought there were 8 of them, but even if he added the ones running away, there were only 5 in total. Tae-soon rapidly answered at those words. I'll say everything I know. He knew a lot of things about Hansu's group. If they hear about that, they will be tempted. And he was rather skilled, too. It wasn't impossible to join that gang. At those words, the leader of the gang who was standing in the front, Giltae, smiled as he spoke. Such a young guy, I like that you catch on quickly. I'll take you in, but after we take care of something. And then somebody came out from behind. Fuck! As Tae-soon saw the guy who he had beaten up to slip intel while coming out of the station checking him out like a snake, he gritted his teeth. You shouldn't beat somebody up because you feel like it. Since we're going to be together from now on, let's settle things here first. As soon as Giltae's words ended, an unbiased violence started. Pook! Ook! Ook! He had a skill too, but maybe due to the enemy having raised his stats for quite a while, or maybe because he wasn't on guard, it felt like his intestines were being twisted and turned. But Tae-soon held back his screams forcefully. If he screamed, then they will enjoy it more, and he will become more pitiful. I'll kill them all. Hansu, who had turned him like this, and the 4 who had abandoned him, he would kill them all. Tae-soon grinded his teeth at the 4 lights running, and the 3 lights at the end as he was getting beat up. Hansu mumbled as he saw the lights running towards him from afar. They're coming. To be honest, this mission had a higher chance of being selected out of the missions. After seeing the statistics, it seemed that this mission had boasted a much higher percentage than the others. But he hadn't seen many people who had obtained this. The method of obtaining it was simple. Eat as much food as you can while the moon is up. But there was a condition. That you needed to be selfish, and that it was only given to the one person who had eaten the most, since it was a selfish, wealthy man's food jar. He could not share anything he cooked himself, while he couldn't hide himself anywhere, while everybody was going crazy from the disappearance of food. If you can get through this situation and selfishly hide and eat the food, only then the jar will show off its powers, as if it meant that you need to at least do that much to hide the food from the moon. Anyways, the guy who had selected the mission really had an evil hobby. Hansu laughed at Sang Jin and Mihi. If you don't like it, then you can leave. It seems like there will be a lot of guests for the meal. First night of the tutorial. The experience and the situation of the tutorial from the people of the final brigade had different, but where was a common point? That nobody went through it with ease. Something always blew up on the first night. Perhaps I will be able to complete a lot of missions tonight. Hansu started to warm up his body slowly as he chewed on the barb snake's meat. Chapter 14. Otherworlds Moon 4. It's cooked well. Hansu stabbed at the meat with the kitchen knife that was almost completely dull and tasted it while chewing on it. Meat from which the toxins were perfectly removed by being boiled with blood and having been mixed with the green worm's pancreas. There's a lot of juices coming out, too. Hansu spoke whilst eating leisurely. Most of the toxins within the goblin meat disappear if you boil it in goblin blood. Just don't eat the intestines or the liver. But they weren't in a situation where they could focus on that. The moonlight was accurately showing the mob of people charging at them. Mihi gulped as she saw the people running at them from afar. Are you perhaps going to protect us when a fight breaks out between us and them? Perhaps if we're friends? Sang Jin's expression became bright at those words. Who else would be his friends other than them in this place? He and Mihi had abandoned Tyon and picked Hansu. But Mihi clenched her teeth at those words and spoke. How do we become that friend? Hansu laughed at those words. It's not like a driver's exam. Why would there be a condition to become a friend? You might have become a friend suddenly at one point. You don't become a friend who can trust each other and protect each other by fulfilling objectives. You become a friend by protecting and trusting each other in every situation, just like those guys. Sang Jin then realized his misconception from Hansu's words, and then spoke as his face reddened. But then how do we deal with those guys? Hansu shook his head at those words. You should take care of yourself at least. Sang Jin was enraged by Hansu's careless words. Damn it! Then why are we hanging around with you? But Hansu only shrugged his shoulders. You should figure that answer out by yourself. The fact is that being with me is more dangerous. Sang Jin clenched his teeth at those words. That was actually a fact. They followed after Hansu and fought down the dangerous train station. If they didn't go with Hansu and instead hung around the bigger crowd, it would have been safer. And Hansu didn't have any notion of keeping them safe. Sang Jin watched the people running towards them from afar as he clenched his teeth. Then he breathed in and out and started to walk over. I thought that we could go to the end together, but you're just too much. I thought that you were my friend, but you do not care for me. Sang Jin started to walk towards a direction after ending his speech, and thought inwardly at the same time. But I didn't do anything bad like that bitch Tyon, so if I come back after removing myself for a while, he would probably take me back in. Hansu laughed at Sang Jin, who was taking shelter in order to first dodge the terrifying storm. Seriously, huh? Once they tie them together in school for a few years, the word friend seems to have gotten much more common. Hansu talked to Mihi as he looked at Sang Jin, who was leaving. Aren't you going too? That's the best solution if you want to be safe. Mihi shook her head at those words. You won't take me back in if I leave. She's really quick to catch on. Mihi clenched her teeth while Hansu laughed inwardly. This isn't the situation to look for an umbrella to escape the rain. The other friend hadn't realized the essential truth yet. They are instinctively looking for a safe place because of the dangerous situation, and since Hansu seemed safe, they had stayed there. But Hansu didn't have the idea to protect them, and they shouldn't be doing that anyways. They should not be looking for safety here. They needed to grow. They needed to rush their growth, to deal with the strong predators that will flood them. And it wasn't only beasts. If you did not want to get eaten up by humans, you needed to become stronger at a faster pace than others. And Hansu was talking very plainly. He said he wouldn't protect them, but did not speak of not learning from him. Didn't he say it before? He won't take them with him, but he wouldn't mind them following. If they rely on something here, they will really die. Mihi came next to Hansu, who was thinking, and started to cook the goblin meat after boiling the goblin blood. This is a gamble. She had too many things to learn, and to do that she needed to follow and learn from Hansu, who had psychic powers, and hunt along with him. If she could survive today next to him, then she had another day's worth of things she could learn. I don't know when an unexpected variable like that moon come out. Mihi, who had strengthened her resolve, started to sharpen the knife to deal with the ones coming towards them. Huff, puff. The four who had ran zealously finally ended near Hansu. Sunmi made a ridiculing expression as she saw the view in front of her. Did he come to camp? And why is he using the pot separately? Sang Jin was nowhere to be seen, and only Mihi and Hansu were left. The two were boiling something in the pot and were chewing on that. Sunmi clenched her teeth at this. These despicable guys, these two knew a way of preserving the food. It's no wonder they had left in such a leisure. These guys probably knew that all the food had burnt down to nothing. Sunmi, who had been grinding her teeth, breathed in and out, and then shook her head. No, this is better actually. If he knows the method, he only needed to share it. And we didn't do anything wrong like Tyon, right? Actually, Tyon being taken by them was a benefit. That senseless guy was holding up his confidence, even in a place like this. If she was Hansu, she would not let someone who acted like Tyon alone. Yeah, if you want to go through this harsh world, you need a trustworthy friend. Her mind was much more at ease after deciding. And once her mind was at ease, hunger was rising up. Damn, I just realized that I couldn't get to eat anything. She was in a situation of tension for the whole day, along with the intense exercise that she didn't usually perform made her energy usage much more severe. And it seemed like that the surrounding friends were in the same situation, from their mouths watering from seeing the meat over there. Sunmi spoke out after setting her mind. Huff, you were here. Could we eat together? Hansu smirked and rose from his seat, and held the needle as he drew a circle around the area 3 nm away from him. Sheik, Sheik. What are you doing? Don't come in. What? Are you seriously going to be that petty? Sunmi spoke out from utter disbelief. They weren't grade schoolers or something, to draw a circle because they bickered a little. And they were simply bystanders, and the main culprit wasn't even here. But Hansu didn't reply as he went back to his seat and started to chew as he continued his meal. Sunmi spoke out after staring at Hansu for a while. If I enter, what are you going to do? Hansu replied softly. Oh, I don't know. But from my psychic powers, it seems that it won't be that good. That bloody psychic powers show such a thing too, huh? As Sunmi grinded her teeth, Hansu just shrugged his shoulders. I know other things too. Like if you stay here, it would be dangerous for you. As soon as Hansu spoke, the four quickly looked behind them. They had forgotten momentarily from the security and distraction from the food in front of their eyes that they were being chased. The mob was screaming in rage as they were running towards them. Look at those bitches! They are cooking by themselves! I know this would happen. Those bitches are the ones that went into the convenience store first. You dare to trick us! And in front of the mob, there was a half-beaten-up Tyon. Ji-sun shouted in glee. Tyon! You were Saf! Shut up, you despicable bitch! You dare to leave me behind like that? Sunmi, Ji-sun, and the others were startled at the enraged shouts that was resonating through the air. They were indeed in a hurry, but they did indeed leave a friend behind. But Ji-sun rebutted in a hurry. No, it isn't like that. Listen to me. We were going to come to Hansu and ask for help. This crazy bitch, you dare say that? Tyon shouted as he grinded his teeth. By that point, he would have been badly beaten up. If he didn't beg and didn't say he would go under them, then it wouldn't have ended this easily and he would have become minced meat. Fuck. To guys who are weaker than me, there's no strong against a number. And that was the reason why he could not forgive them even more. These bitches. I wanted to be together. He could not forgive Hansu, the four bitches, and even Mihi who had betrayed him, and for that, he was willing to go through a little bit of humiliation. Whilst Tyon was looking over in rage, the shouts of the people were getting louder as well. But at that point, Giltay came out as he shouted, "Whoa! Whoa! Calm down first, everybody! The new guy should calm down too." It was the words of one person, but they were rather intimidated. "He has controlled the mob rather well." Hansu nodded at the guy who had spoke to him when he first left. Since he came with a bunch of scruffy guys who treated him as the boss, so controlling a mob wasn't that hard, since he didn't seem like a normal person. Giltay smiled as he looked at Hansu. "It's good to see you again. A young person has such abilities. Where did you get the meat?" Hansu bobbed his chin at those words. "Why are you looking for meat from me when there's meat everywhere?" Giltay looked around the corpses that had been stacked around him. He ate that? Giltay hadn't already tried that out, since he ordered a few to try it out. But that food was not something you could eat. The toxicity was so strong that the ones who had eaten are still having diarrhea and were suffering from dehydration. They will probably die, since dehydration in a situation like this meant death. But he was eating that in ignorance. Giltay organized his thoughts and spoke. "It seems that the younger brother knows the method of eating it." At those words, Hansu nodded as he spoke so everyone could hear. "If you boil it in goblin blood, you can eat it. Go and try it." A simple intel such as this wouldn't hasten the process of the invasion of the abyss. Giltay pondered inwardly as he looked at Hansu. Did they say this bitch had psychic powers? As they approached here, that Tyon guy had babbled everything out, that the guy called Hansu seemed to have psychic powers. And thanks to that, they had all gotten stronger, faster, and attained the food from the store. And he obtained something valuable in there, right? Giltay made his decisions quickly. He didn't know what would happen the next day when the distance between them is spread apart further. And even though he had established a large group, but most of them were normal people, so they were hard to utilize in a fight. If we're going to fight, then today's the day. He had no intention to kill. Why would he kill somebody with psychic powers? And no matter if he flew about, he was only a normal person around 20 years of age. If he receives some beating and some knife cuts, he will be in trauma and become submissive, and then he can suck out his bone marrow. The fact that he's in such a leisure is a bit troubling, but he could figure that out, and that would be that. Giltay, who had made his decision, gave a wink. "The new guy should go over and take a bite. Talk a little too. I heard you guys were friends. If you are friends, that he should at least give you a bit of meat, right?" Tyon, who was grinding his teeth, started to walk over proudly. "If you indeed have some hidden motives, then you shouldn't be able to act recklessly in front of this crowd." Tyon took large steps as he headed towards Hansu's pot, and Hansu, who was watching this, chuckled. "I'm sorry that I couldn't keep it even for a day. This seems like the end of it, Eris." From the way these guys were acting, it seemed like Eris's will would be hard to keep, since he was closer to Keldian anyway. There was a reason why he was closer to him. Mihi, who was watching Tyon walk over towards the circle Hansu had drawn, suddenly felt a chill spike up from behind her. Hansu's expression was changing at a rapid rate. Well, to be more accurate, he was still smiling, but the expression was turning scarier as his eyes were changing. Deeper and at the same time, colder. And Mihi knew instinctively when she saw this. He wasn't angry. This was his true nature. He had simply been holding down on it until now for some reason. She then realized that no matter how selfish Tyon and the others acted in front of Hansu, they had never blocked his way or disturbed him in any way. And Mihi, who had thought up to that point, urgently responded, "No! Don't come in! Don't cross that line!" But then Tyon grinded his teeth as he shouted, "You just wait right there!" And then Tyon recklessly crossed the line.